Yes. So welcome to this webinar for the Agritourism Grants Program. My name is Susan Joy, and today I'm joined by Beth Story.
Hi everyone, I'm Beth Story. I am the Networking and Technical Assistance Lead for the Office of Tourism, and I am here to just sort of help drive all the technical stuff for the webinar.
Thank you, Beth. So again, my name is Susan Joy, and I'm administering the Agritourism Grant Program. Beth and I are both excited about this opportunity and also to read your grant submissions. Before we begin, I'm just going to go over some quick housekeeping. The webinar will be recorded and available on demand. At the end of the webinar, we will have a Q&A session. Please drop any questions in the chat and we will read and answer those at the end. During the presentation, we are going to turn our camera off, so you will only see the presentation, and then we will turn the camera back on at the end for the Q&A. So I'm going to go dark for a little bit, and then you will see the slides. Oops. All right, we are now ready. Again, welcome and thank you for joining us today. If you are just joining us, please make sure you put your name and where you're from in the chat. So what is agritourism in Montana? So agritourism is a form of commercial enterprise linking agricultural processing and producing with education to attract visitors to a farm, ranch, or other agricultural business. This formal definition in Montana was established as part of a broader liability bill in 2017. Agritourism activities can be experiences, such as a hands-on learning opportunity, or education, such as teaching others about agricultural production or processing. Activities also include outdoor recreation like hiking and horseback riding, direct sales like a farmer's market or farm stand, and entertainment such as a farm-to-table dinner. What's the purpose of this agritourism grant? Our goal is to assist Montana's rural and tribal agricultural businesses and communities and to promote agritourism diversification and support in Montana. We are encouraging farmers and ranchers to diversify operations, develop and enhance agritourism opportunities, both new and existing, and generate revenue for the benefit of your local community. There is $300,000 available this funding cycle, and we encourage projects of all sizes to apply. So who is eligible? If you've looked at the program guidelines, you'll see that we have a large list of eligible applicants. So everything from local governments, tribal governments, businesses, including nonprofits registered with the Montana Secretary of State. And we encourage businesses, nonprofits, counties, clubs to all apply. Eligible applicants can submit one application per grant cycle. So how can you use these grant funds? You're allowed to use them for advertising and marketing your agritourism experience or project, developing or enhancing an agricultural experience or activity, business planning and development of your project, education and outreach, or making additions or improvements to your property for safety and accessibility of visitors. Based on availability of funds, the Department of Commerce may award grantees up to $50,000 on a reimbursement basis. A match is not required for approved grant projects up to $10,000. A dollar-to-dollar match is required for projects between $10,001 and $50,000. And this match must be met on every request for funds. Up to 25% of the match can be in-kind goods and services towards your project. For the purposes of this grant, in-kind is defined as a good or service donated to the project or activity. For example, this can include food, web design services, or volunteer labor. For example, if your project total cost is $40,000, the grant will be awarded for $20,000, and you will match that grant award with $20,000 of your own money. Of that $20,000 match, you can have up to $5,000 or 25% be in-kind services or goods. So what's not eligible for this grant? Any of your ongoing or monthly general operating expenses like wages or utility bills, any reimbursement for travel expenses, including attending a conference or a trade show, costs related to refinancing or interest on any of your existing debt, any costs incurred prior to the date identified in your award letter, and the purchase of any real estate, live animals, motorized vehicles. So no snowmobiles, no ATVs, none of that stuff is eligible for this grant. We are also not paying for anything that's prohibited by state or federal law, or anything that violates federal law or doesn't meet all the local and state building codes, food safety, and regulatory requirements. We're also not using this grant for anything outside of Montana or anything prohibited in the contract that an awarded grantee will sign with the Department of Commerce. So what you're looking at right now is the budget template. The budget template, you will need to fill this out and submit it with your grant application. It's available to download from our website and also from the grant portal. Again, you will need to download this and fill this out and submit it with your application. Please try to be as accurate as you can be when you fill this out. We do understand that your project costs may change over time, especially if you're planning for a project to take place this summer, but please be as accurate as you can be. So these are the things that I just wanted to go over. It's very important that you start your application as soon as you can and not wait till the very last minute. The tourism grants team will not be available to you after 5 p.m. on October 24th. So if something goes wrong, we're unable to assist you. We strongly recommend that you familiarize yourself with the grant, the guidelines, download a copy of the PDF version of the application, draft everything in Word, so you have a copy of all your work, just in case something happens and you lose your application. Remember, this is technology, and if it can go wrong, it probably will, especially if you wait until the last minute. Before you get started, we also recommend that you have everything you need to complete the application handy, including your budget template, a rough draft of your application, your EIN number, a certificate of good standing from the Montana Secretary of State, if those things are required for your application. And we also encourage you to create your Okta account with the state of Montana as soon as you can, just to make sure that works and gets you into the system. As a reminder, all the applications must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. on October 24th. That's a Thursday. The grant portal closes at 12:01 a.m. on Friday, October 25th. And just to reiterate, the platform where our grants are submitted will not save your work in progress automatically. You have to manually save your draft as you go. If you walk away from your computer, ServiceNow may also lose your work because it only gives you 60 minutes to complete. That's why we're stressing to people to create your first draft in a Word document, so you always have a copy handy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip to the Agritourism webpage to show you where all these documents live if you're not familiar with it already. So I'm going to stop sharing this page, go to the website, and share that with you. All right, this is the page that you're looking for. And I will share this with all of you in an email and a link to this webinar. But if you scroll down, this is where recording for webinar 1 lives, and this is where today's webinar will live. This register here button will be changed out and it'll say webinar number 2. These are your resources. These are the grant guidelines, a PDF of the application that's just for review and reference. You cannot submit this as your application. We also have included the application scoring criteria, so you'll know what the review team is looking for in your grant, and then also the mandatory budget template. When you click on apply here, it will take you to the page, the Montana Grants and Loans page. It will specifically take you to the Agritourism Grants Program application. We have the description here, and over here under application forms, you will also see another copy of the budget. Again, we recommend that you draft this in a Word document, so you will always have a copy of your work. So for now, I'm going to stop sharing this page and go back to the PowerPoint. All right, so finally, we would be more than happy to take questions. I'm going to turn the video back on so you can see us. And if you have any questions, we would love to hear from you and help you work through anything that you might have. So Beth, is there anything in the chat?
So Myra had a question about us helping them with the application.
Myra, that's a great question. You're welcome to call or email us questions. We cannot help you draft your application or write it for you, but we're more than happy to answer questions, walk through an example that you have. More than happy to do that with you. And if you'd like to ask your question verbally, you can raise your hand. Beth will unmute you and you can ask us your question as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Not a problem. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Perfect. And then Sheila, is it Sheila had a question as well. Sheila, your question, is there a list of previously funded projects?
That's a great question. No, because this is the first time we've been able to offer an agritourism grant. So we're really excited to see all of your ideas and your projects. And in the future, perhaps you will be one of the examples that we share with future grantees.
Hi Susan, it's Grace. I've got a couple questions. My first question is, can you use this program to apply for, say, a phase 1 of a total project? Like putting in water and sewer for a farm store that will be completed. The water sewer portion might be completed in the first year, but the total project will be completed in year 3 or 4.
That's a great question. It will really depend on the application that is submitted. We would expect to see a very thorough outline of the entire project with the understanding from the applicant that they're applying for phase 1 work, but they have the total project very well identified and laid out in the application. We would hate to fund something that doesn't go any farther than the first phase. So when you're working with an applicant or drafting the application yourself, make sure that all the phases are identified, that they're realistic and thoroughly described, and that is clearly identified how phase 1 will support the future phases.
Thank you.
Yes. Do you have an additional question, Grace?
My next question, I realize that 2 of my questions are essentially the same, but my next question is, you talked about being really detailed on the budget. If some of the expenses listed in the budget are different varieties of trees, do we need to list out those specific varieties of trees, or could we just say 500 apple trees? Do we need to break it down into varieties in the budget, or can that be covered in the budget narrative?
I would group the trees together as one budget line item, and then in your narrative, maybe expand on 25% of the trees will be this variety, 30% will be this variety.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then Donna, you had a question. It said, would a building be eligible for a training center for outdoor skill building, yoga, and heritage history classes?
That is a wonderful question, Donna. I would say that in your application, you need to clearly identify how the building will support these agritourism activities. It's great that you already have a space and your project sounds like it'll be falling into the education component of an eligible activity. So I strongly encourage you to apply and tell us more about how you'll be using this existing structure to support your agritourism activities and projects.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So, I have a hog farm and we have hosted like 4-H groups and FFA little kids and whatnot. Like when we have litters of piglets, into our barn. And I would like to purchase like coverall outfits for the people to wear and maybe rubber boots for everybody to wear like when they're in with the pigs. Is that something that can go for this grant? And also when I'm applying, do I need to have like say I find them on Amazon, do I need to like show the proof of that since I haven't already purchased them, like show the price of them and everything?
That's a great question. So to answer the first part, what you're talking about sounds like it would be an eligible expense either as an education, part of your overall education activities, or it could also be a safety issue, as I'm sure that you don't want cross-contamination between the pigs in the outdoor world or the outdoor world and your piglets when they're at that young age. So it's that health and safety aspect. And then for the second part of your question, no, you do not need to provide us with screen grabs from Amazon showing the price of coveralls. We trust that the applicants have done their research and the costs that you're identifying are realistic. We know that in 6 months that price may go up or down, but in the moment, if you've documented that price, you won't need to submit additional documentation or screen grabs.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tana, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Okay. Hi, Susan. I just
Tim.
double checking if, so the amount requested, if it's 50,000, then we match with another 50,000. Is that correct? Or does the project total have to be no more than 50,000?
If you have a $100,000 project and you can match it with 50 of your own, that would be great. So yes, you can go 50,000 with the grant and then 50,000 with your own money.
Okay. Can I ask a second question?
Of course.
I know that like motorized equipment and things like that do not qualify. However, would like a utility trailer to store items and then tables and chairs for accommodating larger groups qualify?
You would need to outline that specifically in your application, and we'd want to see a compelling narrative as to why you would need a utility trailer and not a shed or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Donna, if you'd like to unmute, you may ask your question as well, because it sounds like you had something to add.
Thank you. Does it cover the cost to build a building if we have half the match?
So in your grant narrative, that's an excellent question, Donna. You would have to clearly identify what the building is being built for, what the match is, the overall cost of that building, where you are in the phase projects of putting that structure together, how it fits in with your agritourism project. I mean, as long as it aligns with your one of those eligible activities, then we would want to see that in the narrative and have a good and thorough description of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Stormy, if you'd like to unmute and ask your question, that'd be wonderful.
Hi, how's it going? So my question is, since it says no purchase of live animals, my question is, do sperm and eggs, embryos, is that considered live animals as well?
What's the context?
So it would be under, say, if I was using the sperm and the embryos for education on teaching kids how to impregnate, say, cattle or, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. I think we would want to see that in the grant narrative, how your purchase of sperm or embryos is part of your overall education and the big picture use of that. That could be something where if the grant did not pay for those genetics, that could be your match towards the project because you would be paying for those things and using that as your match towards the bigger project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That's a great question.
And let's see. Is it Sheila? Shayla, you had a question about when the funding cycle run?
Yeah, it's Shaylia. I was just
I'm-
curious about the funding cycle. When does it start?
That's a great question. So our timeline right now is that what the grant cycle closes 11:59 on the 24th. We will do a completeness screen of all of the received applications. The complete applications then go into a review cycle, and then those approved grants are then reviewed and seconded by Department of Commerce leadership, and then the governor's office. Then we notify all of you. By now, it's about Christmas time. So your project, you will not know that you've been awarded money until January, and you will have 12 months to complete your project. From the day you sign your contract, you will have 12 months to finish your project. So you're looking at about a year from January to January to do your project, to complete it, and then we have a few months in which we will work with you on your final reporting and final invoicing. Does that answer your question, Shailia?
Yes, that was very detailed. Could I ask a follow-up clarification question to the question Tana asked you a while back about the match funding?
Of course.
Okay, just to make sure I understand it clearly in my head, 0 to 10,000, no matches required. Let's say, for instance, you were going to do, that $30,000 project. So
Yeah.
would the first 10,000 be exempt from match, and then you just need to come up with that match for the 20?
No, so if your
Okay.
total project is $30,000, the
Okay.
grant award would be 15 and your cash match would be 15.
Okay, thank you.
For all of it, yes, you're welcome. Great question.
And then Myra, your question was, do we need a SAM number?
No, Myra, you do not need a SAM number.
Yeah, do we need the SAM?
No, you do not need a SAM number because this is not a federal
Okay.
grant. But you do need to show that you're in good standing and registered with the Montana Secretary of State. And I'm assuming you are as a business owner. And if you're a nonprofit, then we'd want your EIN number showing that you're tax exempt. And this question came up in the previous webinar where an applicant commented that you can pay $10 to download a PDF of your certificate in good standing from the Secretary of State. However, you can also take a screen grab from the Secretary of State website showing that you're active and in good standing, and both of those are enough for our grant. So if you don't have to pay $10 to the
Okay.
Secretary of State to download their certificate, you can just screen grab it and save yourself $10.
Okay. Okay. You kind of cut out for a little bit, so I don't know if you answered the second part of my question, about being eligible if I received the value added producer grant. Can I still apply for this grant?
You can, because the value added, the growth through agriculture grant, if I'm thinking of the same grant, it's through the Department of Agriculture. So it's a separate state entity. This is through the Department of Commerce, and you are eligible with
okay.
us.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. These are really wonderful questions, and I encourage all of you, if you have additional questions, to reach out to me or Beth or any of the tourism grant staff. We're more than happy to help you. You have a few days to get your application together, and we really look forward to reading them.
Before anybody goes, I just want to emphasize this. I took the time last week and filled out the application myself, just as a normal citizen. And I have quite a bit of grant experience, and it took me about an hour to fill out the grant. There's 29 questions. It's quite extensive. So please, please, please make sure that you are copying and pasting your answers into the grant. Take the PDF that we have with all the grant questions on it, write your questions out ahead of time, and then copy and paste them into the actual application, because it will take you a bit of time, and please do not wait until the late afternoon or the evening that the grant closes, because like Susan said, and just to reiterate, after 5 o'clock, the grant team will not be here on that day.
All right. So if there are no further questions,
I just
we
have
will
one
end-
more, sorry.
Oh, go right ahead.
So how thorough, like with the value added producer grant, I had to be so thorough, like as far as everything I wrote, like basically assuming the person reading the grant literally did not have a clue about farming. How thorough do we need to be with our answers on this grant?
I'm so glad that you asked that. So it's always a good idea to assume that we know nothing about farming. That would be safe.
Yep.
However, other part is on the website, we have included something called Attachment A, which is the Agritourism Grants Program scoring criteria. You can look at that document and it will give you a very clear idea of how we will be scoring every answer to all of those questions and the points possible. So wonderful question, Myra. Definitely assume that we know nothing. Be as thorough as you can. You don't need to write War and Peace, but you do
Okay.
have to complete.
Okay, like I think I had to write War and Peace for my other grant. That's why I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, maybe not that much detail, but as complete as you can. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome.
And Shaylee, if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Okay, I have another question. Since this is the first year for this grant proposal, if a person is successful, how is the funding awarded to them? Is it awarded in a lump sum upfront, or, in increments? How is the awards done?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So if you read the application guidelines that are posted on our website, we provide detail on that. This is a reimbursement grant. So say that you purchased some concrete to have a paved path, you would submit to us those receipts, and then we would reimburse you for the concrete. If it's a project under $10,000. If it's a project over $10,000, when you submit that receipt to us, you need to demonstrate the match and the cash that we are paying you back on the reimbursement basis. So if you're doing up to $10,000, no match is required when you submit the receipt to us for reimbursement. But if you do have a match, you need to be meeting and documenting that match on every request for reimbursement. And everyone who's awarded a grant will receive training from us and guidance and the receipts and everything that you need to be successful in working with us on your project. Excellent question, and really appreciate that.
Yeah, and then one other follow-up to that. I know it'll depend on, you getting your receipts in correctly, etc. But reimbursement can be expected within 30 days, 60 days?
30 days. Yep. And I'm glad you asked that question. Part of being a successful applicant and a smooth process is that when you receive notification that you're awarded, we'll be working with all of you to make sure you're set up in the state of Montana payment system. We do everything through electronic funds transfer. So getting those pieces in place ensure a seamless transition of receipts to us, reimbursement to you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Are there any additional questions? Well, I will go ahead and put the email address for the tourism grant program And if you guys have any more questions, please do not hesitate to email us and we will get back to you.
Hey, it's Shilea again. One more question.
Of course.
On any of your questions or the budget narrative or anything, are we limited in how long the response can be?
That's a great question. No, there are no character limits.
Okay. War and Peace. No, I'm kidding.
But just remember, we have to read everything, so. No, I really appreciate all of you joining us and all your excellent questions and your attention. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be sending you a link to this webinar. Check out the website with all of the documents that you need. And like I said, we're here to answer any of your questions. Thank you again so much. Have a wonderful Monday, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.